Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to get us started because we're going to try and keep this short and sweet and be wrapped up by 9 o'clock. So thank you so much for joining us to talk about some of the challenges and opportunities that families are facing during the pandemic. So my name is Rebecca Webb. I am the Executive Director at KW Counseling and mom of 3, which is interesting. So I'm also really looking forward to this evening's conversation. I will introduce Rosie Del Campo, who has very generously supporting us this evening and acting as our facilitator and moderator for this discussion. And she will take it away in a second, but I did want to start with our land acknowledgement. In our work towards a community where no one is left behind, KW Counseling gratefully acknowledges that we are on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Neutral peoples, and on the Haldimand Tract, which runs almost 10 kilometers deep on either side of the Grand River. So this is our 70th anniversary, and we often say that we're in the relationship business. We work with individuals, couples, and families to strengthen their relationships and improve their well-being. So I would like to, in that theme and in that framework, introduce Rosie Del Campo, who will talk through some questions with each of our panelists and hopefully have a chance to get some questions from our participants also. So thank you so much, Rosie.
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to be here tonight. This is an honor to be able to moderate this panel, and as a parent, I know I have a lot of questions right now, you know, pandemic or no pandemic, I have a lot of questions. So I am also looking forward to hearing what all of you have to say. I'd like to start by asking each of our panelists to introduce themselves. So tell us who you are and what you do. And let's start with Diane.
Hi, I'm Diane McGregor, and I'm also working at KW Counseling Services. I'm very sort of honored to be able to say that. I've been with KW Counseling Services 8 years. And one of my really unique roles is that I get to manage all of our parenting educations and supports, including our Parenting Now program and our more formal kind of parenting education that we call Parenting with Passion. The other cool thing I get to do is work with all these other amazing panelists here in all of our really strong community work that we all do together. So I'm really pleased to be here with all of these amazing folks tonight.
Thanks, Diane. Wanda.
Hi, everyone. My name is Wanda Kampijan. I am a community connector. I work for the YMCA early on, and my role is part of a strategy called the First 2,000 Days strategy. And what that does is help to increase awareness of the existing resources and services that parents can access that support them on their parenting journey. So what I call myself the eyes and ears on the ground for our early on team. So I'm out in the community at different events. You might see me at the grocery store with a display highlighting early years, the whole early years system. So not just the early on centers, but all the services that really feed into supporting families with young children. I'm also the co-chair of the Positive Parenting Community Committee and a member of the Early Literacy Alliance for the region. And I'm thrilled to be part of this panelist. I too work alongside everybody who's here tonight. So I look forward to answering some of your questions.
Thank you, Wanda. We also have Barbara Ward with us tonight.
Hi, thanks, Rosie. So I'm the mental health lead for the public school board, and it's my job to help all of our staff in the schools and in our classrooms to attend to student well-being as well as to mental health. I've had the privilege of working with children and youth and families for many years, a long time in this community, and it's absolutely been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you. And Barb Cardow.
Thanks, Rosie. Hi, everybody. I'm Barb Cardow, and I'm the Director of Children's Services at the region of Waterloo. As the director, I represent the region as the service system manager for our early years and childcare system. So all things connected to childcare and to early on child and family centers. We are the system manager for. I'm also the co-chair of the Children and Youth Planning Table, which is a very large collective of about 60 organizations and 600 people who work with children and youth. I've been in the field for over 35 years, primarily in the childcare sector and in special needs.
Thank you very much, Barb. And last but not least, we have Angela with us tonight.
Thank you, Rosie. My name's Angela Sider, and I'm the volunteer chapter leader for the organization Parents for Children's Mental Health. And I'm the chapter leader for the Waterloo region, along with a team that stands behind me that makes things happen for the Waterloo region and the supports to parents and families who are raising children or youth that have mental health challenges or are struggling with some kind of mental health. I personally am the co-owner of an organization called Cadence's Staffing Services. It's a social service staffing agency in the central and the central west region of Ontario. So that keeps me pretty busy. And then I do some private leadership consulting as well.
Thank you very much, Angela. And those are our panelists. Thank you for joining us this evening, panelists. And for those of you joining our webinar tonight, if you have a question for one of our panelists, feel free to share it with us tonight, and we'll get to some of your questions in a moment. But first, I'd like to start with Diane. And Diane, one of the #1 questions we're hearing right now is, this is an extremely stressful time. Of course it is. We've never done anything like this before in our lifetime. So how can parents and kids manage that stress, and how do you even begin to explain to your kids why they have to still be in quarantine at this point?
Wow, Rosie, those are really good questions and really important questions. And truthfully, those are the things that we're hearing when we're talking with parents as well. An interesting thing for me is that stress is essentially the body's reaction to change. And what are we going through right now but the biggest changes that the world has ever experienced, right? Or at least in our lifetimes, for sure, and in our children's lifetimes. And so it's no wonder that that stress is becoming one of the kind of key pieces that we're struggling with. In the beginning, I noticed a lot of, it was more that kind of reactive kind of place. Oh my goodness, and people were just trying to learn, trying to find out what they needed to do. Still with this idea that, well, it'll be, in a couple of weeks, we'll be back at school, or we'll kind of be back to normal. And then as this has stretched on and on and on, I think it's just the stress level has just gone up and up and up. And one thing about stress is that it comes in waves, right? So there'll be days when you're just overwhelmed and you just feel like you're not coping because it just feels like too much. And a few days later, you're like, oh, I'm not doing too bad right now. And then it hits you again. So, and I think one of the things that I hope people walk away with tonight is just kind of getting their head around the fact that these kinds of reactions are absolutely normal. This is how we learn to cope with the changes, the drastic changes that are going on in our lives, and the uncertainty and the unknowns. It's there on a continuous daily basis. And you asked, how do we help our kids understand this? Because one of the things that it's important to know is that kids are feeling this stress as well, no matter what their age is. It starts to get expressed in different kinds of ways. So a little 2 or 3-year-old is going to express their stress very differently than a 13 or 16-year-old. We're going to see different things from our kids. But the bottom line is we're all experiencing that kind of stress. And, I just the other day was kind of chatting with one of the neighborhood teenagers, and she's like, I can't take this anymore. I can't take it. I need to get out. I just need to get out. And she says, why can't I? Why can't I? And there's no good answer that's going to make any of us really understand exactly what it is, or like how can we fix this? Right now we can't. So coping with all that stress, what I know to work best for me, and my coworkers and my fellow kind of community partners will know I've turned to some of you at different times, because the number one thing that helps is reaching out to somebody that you trust, that you care about, that you can kind of let the ugly show and know that you're not going to be judged because you have these really ugly moments or these ugly thoughts. And that, so that we can kind of reach out, talk about what we're going through, and share that and move on and be okay for the next little while. But we also have to coach ourselves through knowing that that doesn't mean that we're over it forever. That wave will come back and we'll go in and out of it. And so it's that moment of connection, and our kids need that too. So when they reach out to us, you know, if we can drop some of the things that maybe aren't that important and spend 10 minutes with our kids, just acknowledging this is hard, it doesn't make any sense, it seems like it's going on forever, you miss your friend Ben so much, you know, I get it that you're bored out of your mind doing the same thing every day. You know, just acknowledging those experiences can make a huge difference.
Thank you, Diane. I'd like to bring in Barbara Ward now and ask you about distance learning. This is a big one for parents right now. Tell us about the challenges and the opportunities.
Okay, thank you, Rosie. I first want to say, though, that distance learning is not homeschooling and it's not online learning. It is learning from home with school staff and parental supports at a minimum. You're not a teacher, but you are a supporter of learning at home, as Dr. Jean Clinton puts it. At the public school board, we're focused our distance learning on mind, heart, and body. Not that it wasn't there before in class learning, but we're really trying to focus on the relationships and connections between the students as well as with the teacher and the students. And it's more important when people are connecting through, let's say, Google Classroom or with their teacher, that there's some laughter and there's some fun. We're not doing a whole lot of academics right now because of equity issues. And so the new learning is limited at this point in time. When I speak to opportunities and challenges, though, we need to remember that it's different for all of us. So what might be considered a challenge for some is an opportunity for others. Some of our kids, some of our students are thriving at home. They like to be alone. They like distance learning. The pressure is off for them for school, and some of them are doing well. Others are being really challenged at this time. They're missing their friends. They're bored. They're irritated. They're frustrated. And they are finding that they have to get creative in how to learn things that are meaningful to them. The bigger question, I think, beyond, you know, what are the challenges and opportunities, is when this is over, what do you want the story to be about how you were during this time and what your role was as a parent, as a partner or spouse, as a son or daughter, as a student, and as a community member. So I think it's important to remember some of that. So I'll go into some of the challenges, though. We're really familiar with the challenges. I could spend the whole hour speaking about challenges and another hour speaking about opportunities. So I'll just highlight a few of them. The one thing, just before we started, we were talking about with technology, how hard it is to have fun and have laughter virtually when we're in meetings. And so we're really missing that in some of our lives. And we can imagine how much the students are missing that, because so much more of their day has to do with fun peer interactions and laughing. So they are feeling quite isolated right now and lacking a sense of belonging to their school community, to their classmates, and things like that. Some of the other challenges have to do with less social pressures, which could be good because there's less pressure to fit in and to perform, but there's also less social pressure from your peers to do well. And we know that some of our kids study harder and engage in learning because their friends are doing it too. And so as parents, you might be finding that your child's a little less motivated, a little less engaged, and it could be because there's less social pressures for that. The other challenge is around mental health, of course. We are all stretched. Our coping skills during this time are stretched, and we have to develop new coping skills. And it's kind of like building the airplane in the air, right? It's best to learn these skills when we're not activated and we're not high on emotion. But sometimes we have to learn it while we're in the middle of it too. And I think that's what we're all doing, and we're role modeling that for our kids. Now, when it comes to opportunities, this is an excellent time to learn about your child's learning style and help them figure out how to accommodate it. So for example, do they learn better through videos, through reading, through connecting with others and figure things out together? Do they need the room to be quiet? Do they need background noise? Do they need no disruptions at all? What's the lighting like? Right? So here's the time you can really observe your student or your child as a learner, and then maybe bring some of this forward to help them learning in the future as well. There are lots of opportunities as well to engage with your kids in life lessons. We have all been baking and cooking and exploring nature outside and trying, taking the time to figure out how things work and really finding what our kids are curious about and what they're interested in. And so it's a neat opportunity for us to really drill down on some of that. And this helps build strong connections with our kids as well, which is really, really important. We all have heard how, we need to take the time to do that and really listen to our kids. But let me tell you, it's really important to do that because think of it as an investment. Because when your children are a little bit older and when they hit the teenage years, if they haven't yet, sometimes you have to rely on this relationship with them to see them through a difficult time. It's about these positive emotions and these positive memories as almost a bank that sometimes you have to draw on through the tougher times. I'm a parent of a 20-year-old and have had to rely on that a few times. And it's definitely been worthwhile. The other opportunity during this time right now is to teach social emotional learning skills. How many times have we said that we don't have time to physically take care of ourselves? We don't have time to mentally take care of ourselves. And some of us have a little bit more time now to be able to do that. Some of us have a lot less time to be able to do that as well. So it's important for everybody to figure out how to still take care of themselves and build these resiliency skills, how to have a growth mindset, which is where we see our mistakes as learning opportunities and know that our brain is growing. It's an opportunity for us to see how we can be gracious and have gratitude despite adversity, right? So we can help kids understand that, yeah, you can't go outside to play with your friends, but you have your brother or your sister, you have access to food and you have access to shelter and you have access to toys and things like that. And helping kids to lean into the small pleasures and the small joys of life and really feel them and not take it for granted. We're a very privileged and blessed society and community here. And there's lots of opportunity to see how much our pets can make us laugh and how much videos might make us laugh and each other, exploring how we can escape through movies and books and stories. And we're teaching kids how to live a balanced life and still grow in less than ideal situations. And you know what? That's what life is, right? Life is never ideal situations where we learn to grow and where we can learn to do some of these things. So as much as we teach kids how to protect themselves from COVID and stay physically safe, we need to teach kids how to keep them safe mentally as well by giving them resiliency skills and helping them to be what Ken Gergen says, the guardian of the common good in our community and in our country and our world by teaching them how to help take care of themselves, but how to help take care of others and being that common good. So thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. One more question for you, and it's more on distance learning because a lot of parents are now working from home. So they're working from home and they're trying to support their child's learning at home. How can they find balance?
Yeah, it's a tricky balance. We all know that. And no one has it perfect. And I think if you have it perfect, then you're probably missing something. So balance is about work and rest and activity like exercise and play. We need to incorporate play into our lives as well as adults. And it's also about sleep and healthy eating and a healthy lifestyle. And if you want to throw some other things into that mix, you can throw into routine and patience and compassion, especially for yourself, right? And so that's what balance is all about. And we need to model this for our kids. So we're working from home, and their work is their schoolwork, right? So we need to teach them how to incorporate some of these things. How are we showing how we're working and balancing our lives with rest and play and activity as well, and even with our parenting? Your kids will remember what they felt during this pandemic with you, not what they learned from you in their distance learning. Right? So our school boards are promoting just for parents to do the best and for kids to do the best they can in this situation. No one is marking the schoolwork. No one's evaluating your skills in this, but your child is learning from you how you approach this and balance your own life and how you handle your own emotions, especially when they're really intense, right? It's easy to handle our emotions when they're not intense. It's when they're intense that it counts. I heard Jason Allen from Third Way Consulting, he was quoted in the Record recently, and he said, "You're not a teacher, you're not even a TA or an EA. At best, you're a parent volunteer on an extended or poorly planned field trip." Right? He went on with a little bit more and exaggerated a little bit more, but I kind of cut it off there. And that's really important to keep in mind, that distance learning is not meant to duplicate classroom learning or that social environment. It's meant to be more about activities that you can do every day with your child. That it counts: art, music, drama, nature walks, baking and cooking, science stuff, reading, having discussions, right? How many times are we exploring with our teenagers about what their interests are, because they change a lot, and how would they change the world if they were in charge of it? How would they lead the world right now? What do they think, right? So we can really explore with them some of those things. It doesn't have to be about math class. There's also lots of learning to be done outside of the curriculum, the academics that teachers are doing, that can also lead to success and happiness in life. Because happiness in life and success isn't just about learning academics, right? You think about all those other skills that you need to be successful. We need to be creative. We need to be flexible in our thinking. We need to have critical thinking skills. We need to have self-awareness skills and self-reflect. We need to know ourselves and know what we'll stand up for and what we'll stand against. We need to know how to lead people and how to influence people. So sometimes just let it be more about the journey than about the outcome or the answers or the results. And be sure to ask your teacher for help if you need it, your child's teacher. Email them if there's something that's not making sense with the academic instruction. And email us if you need any support when it comes to social, emotional, or mental health resources. Your child will learn what they need to learn, and the teacher will help them catch up once we all return to school, so that no student is left behind. No student is going to fail because of this. So sometimes we just need to give ourselves permission to back off.
Barbara, thank you very much. I'd like to bring in Angela now and ask you, Angela, how can parents use this pandemic as an opportunity to connect with kids?
It's a great question, Rosie. I think I would echo a little bit about what Diane said, that the pandemic, it really equates to change. It really is it's unprecedented times, and I think we're all on a steep learning curve in whatever aspect of work or family life that we've got going on. And so I'll speak from a parent's perspective, and I know others have as well, but I'll definitely speak from a parent's perspective. For me personally, I had to figure out how I was going to cope first. It's a little bit like the oxygen mask on an airplane. You need to put your own on first before you can put your kids on. And so for me, I had to figure out what that meant for me. I'm somebody who struggles with depression. And so for me, I had to figure out what were going to be the self-care things that I was going to need to do as a parent to take care of myself so that I could help the kids do their schooling and could help them cope with some of the uncertainty that's going on. And then, you know what, it's helping our kids, like you said, our kids understand how society's coping, and you know, the observations that they make about decisions that are being made. I mean, I have teenagers, so they look at kind of the decisions around self-isolation and things like that, and they have all those questions. I think one of the biggest things is routines have changed. So, you know, kids are used to getting out of bed in the morning, getting ready, going to school, and all that changes. And I think parents try to keep some consistency as much as possible. And yet I know for me with teenagers, that's a real struggle. They don't want to get out of bed before 11:30 or 12. And that has been one of the things that I've just had to give up and realize that that's okay as teenagers. If they're going to do their homework in the afternoon and still do a few chores or be engaged with the family in the evening, that's okay. And that might actually be healthier. Sometimes research says actually that teenagers need to sleep in a little bit. So that's not all bad. I'm going to highlight really quickly some of the benefits. I think that there definitely are some benefits, and others have highlighted those. Interestingly enough, Barb and I didn't connect about this in advance, but I wanted to talk a little bit about creativity and flexibility as well, and you mentioned both of those things, Barb. I think the biggest change that I've noticed with my family is that there's more time together. We are in each other's space because we're in the house, and there are pros and cons to that. There's definitely pros in that we get to spend more time together. And there's less social demands, and we can really enjoy each other's company, but it also means that at times we're stepping on each other's toes and in each other's space. And that can come with its challenges as well when there isn't that break where kids get to go away and be themselves for the day and then come home to family. So I think for us, it's involved some changes in our family around spending time together. So one of the things that we have, I guess, revived is family games night. And I think those are sometimes the things that when life is difficult and challenging and busy, we drop those things. And so we have started family games nights again. And I would say my daughter, who's probably the one who is least likely to engage, has fully engaged and loves Settlers of Catan all over again. So there's things like that have really been the benefits for our family. Another one, and I know Barb, you talked a little bit about this, was around creativity, and specifically I think about as it relates to helping the kids cope. So one of the things that my son, he's supposed to be taking gym right now, and so he has to do an activity tracker, and we've been doing gardening and landscaping in the backyard, and part of his activity is helping me move rocks and learning about gardening and things like that, and watering the plants. And I mean, certainly he still does his basketball, and he still does his, he walks the dog and things like that, but it's about it's about thinking differently, like you said, Barb, about kind of the education component. It's learning some of those life skills. Can be things like learning to do your own laundry and cleaning your room more thoroughly, dusting. I mean, dusting is something teenagers don't generally do. So those are some of the things that we're trying to incorporate in that are really those life skills that are meaningful and are going to advance their learning, but isn't necessarily sitting in front of a computer doing math. Don't get me wrong, we're doing that too, most days. A couple other things I was going to highlight is I have henna on my hand, and I don't know if you can really see it, but my daughter, has some of her own personal challenges at times, and connecting with the family can sometimes be tricky. And so one of the things that her and I have done over the last little while is spend some time doing henna. So she will do henna on my arm, which is a really positive attachment based, those social emotional pieces that Barb was talking about. Just creating that real connection can make such a difference for her and for me. It's great. It's positive interaction for me to have with her as well. The other piece was the flexibility piece, and I think it really is about thinking differently about how we're doing what we're doing. There are days, and there have been days, where we don't do any schoolwork, and there have been, I would say, 2 or 3 days straight where we haven't necessarily done schoolwork, and the house isn't burning down, nothing's fallen apart, and so we have tried to be really flexible about what our teens need on any given day. And if school is not what they need, or it's not going to necessarily keep us calm and feeling safe and stable, then we say scrap that day, and we just call it a PD day, and we don't do any schoolwork. Now, don't get me wrong, we strategize, how are we going to get this done by Friday? You know, we still try to do that, but there are courses specifically. So my daughter's in grade 8 going into high school, and there is some classes that she refuses to participate in. And we have, like you said, Barb, connected with the school about what do we need to do about that if she's not going to participate in any of the, you know, the physical activity stuff, gym class. And that has been, they have been extremely helpful in helping us navigate that and helping us know what we need to worry about covering and what we don't necessarily need to worry about. So that's been positive. I'll highlight some of the challenges that we've experienced, and I've already kind of touched on some of those, because where there are positives, oftentimes there's challenges that kind of go along with it as well. Anxiety in general is up in our house. I would say where, and I'll speak to in some generalizations too about our families with Parents for Children's Mental Health, and where that might, where we connect with families and where that makes a difference for them. So we've got lots of families who have children and youth who struggle with anxiety. And certainly when you throw out the word pandemic and you start to look at all these restrictions that are within the community, that starts to increase anxiety for children and youth, and that causes a lot of stress. Another one is around social expectations. So sometimes, and Barb, you touched on this a little bit, but social expectations can make a difference. I'm sorry about the dog barking in the background. I have no idea what she's barking at. So social expectations can sometimes be beneficial, like you said. It spurs students on to try to do better. I think the downfalls of that when it comes to teens is they might stay in their pajamas all day, or getting them to get out of bed and shower is a bit of a, so we have noticed some of those things, and then those things sometimes become tense. For at least for the kids that are in our house. The other thing I was going to highlight is, and we talked a little bit about this already, but the technology and friend issues. Even though they're not at school, friend issues are still there because technology is a real thing, and children and youth interact like they would in person, sometimes inappropriately on technology, and so those things play a different role when youth don't have the opportunity to go back to school and make amends and move on and and re-jive with their friends. So that can sometimes create some challenges, and we're hearing a little bit about that with our families across PCMH. The other thing is, obviously, and this kind of goes without saying, but lack of those positive engagement activities. So things like hanging out with friends, parties. I've got a grade 8 who's not going to have a grade 8 grad this year. It's those kinds of things, and helping them process that loss and kind of letting them mourn that and then move on, or be creative about how can we do something different. Another one is lack of sports has been a real challenge in our house, and I'm sure I'm not alone. Whether it's football, soccer, whatever, not having those organized sports where some of our kids that struggle with mental health, whether that's you know, as simple as needing to be busy and having ADHD, or whether that's kind of just overall well-being and needing to be active, that plays a role too. And so it's trying to find, it's about being creative and trying to find other outlets for them to be active and meet that need without the organized sports being available. And then the only other thing I was going to say, and it's partly because I have teens, but it's probably not just teens, is technology use is up in our house. And I'm sure I'm not alone. And as much as I sometimes feel like I need to judge myself about that, I just have to let it go. It's a little bit of, again, it's about being creative around what is it they're doing with the technology, as opposed to, say, gaming for 6 hours straight. So it's finding ways for them to connect with their friends. My daughter has a reading app that she uses, and we've noticed a significant increase in her vocabulary since she's been kind of using this reading app. And so it's trying to find some of these other creative ways to use technology that isn't necessarily just gaming or unproductive. So yeah, so those are the only other thing I was going to mention around kind of the balance of being a parent trying to work from home. So I have a company I launched only last year, and am not drawing an income off of it, and yet there's still work that needs to be done. And so I'm trying to work well, you know, taking care of the kids and managing things at home. And I think one of the biggest things, or two, I'll say two, they kind of go together, of the biggest learnings for me have been realistic expectations for both myself, that I place on myself, also for the kids around their schoolwork, around how they're going to cope and how engaged maybe they're going to be if they're spending so much time at home and in the house, and then also being adaptable. So it's about being able to be flexible and saying, you know what, today I was going to work and it's not a great day today, so I'm going to pack it in and I'm going to go for a nap. And there have been numerous days where we have done that, or I have done that, or the kids have done that. So yeah, so those are some of the things from a kind of a parent lens on at least what it's like to be in our house right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Angela. Thank you. A question for Wanda now. Parents and caring adults should be supportive of the children in their lives, but how can parents care for themselves?
This is such an important topic there, Rosie, and I thank Angela for touching on this a little bit. And I feel like parenting is a journey of self-reflection. And so if you have the opportunity to self-reflect, come up with some strategies on how you're going to manage a situation first before you manage it, I think that is the beginning of self-care. We tend to, as parents, we're kind of bad at this. We tend to leave our own self-care till the very last, skipping it for things that we feel we're more productive at, or perhaps is better use of time. So I'm not sure if that resonates with folks out there, but because some of us are better at it than others, for sure. And what I can say and what I'm hearing tonight is that parenting is hard. Parenting's hard in regular times, whatever regular times might mean, but throw in COVID and everything shutting down and physically distancing, it has really made parenting really, really challenging right now. So some of the messages around self-care for parents is not new. It's just a reminder that we need to do that. And Angela, you know, you really framed it well in how you're modeling for your own children. And what I'm hearing as well is that being flexible, setting those expectations a little bit lower, because we're not dealing with our regular routine, so we can't have the same expectations. And I appreciated the metaphor of securing your own oxygen mask before securing your children's or anyone else's, because that really ensures that our own well-being is at the heart of self-care. We need to make sure that we have enough oxygen to keep going. And self-care should be very intentional and planned. It should be part of your day-to-day routines. It doesn't have to be a lot of time for self-care, but whatever that looks like, whatever form self-care it takes, it's a chance to replenish so that we can be there for others. So, and recognizing that it's not just about physical care, it's mental and emotional too. Scheduling some of that self-care every day creates some regularity, and that's really helpful for us to take control of a situation such as now that we really feel we don't have a lot of control in. And what a great, tremendous gift this is that you give your child when you model this self-care for them. It tells them that you respect yourself and you advocate for yourself and what your needs are. It gives your child an opportunity to practice that skill as well, build their confidence and in their independence. So some of how we did our self-care pre-COVID might look differently now. You know, we can't meet our friend for coffee, maybe stroll through the mall, maybe get a haircut, you know, things like that are very different. So we need to kind of pivot, rethink what our self-care practices might look like. And even for those of us who do a really good job of self-care, this time has really thrown me for a loop. I feel very confident in how I care for myself as a person, as a parent. But even I've been struggling a little bit to try and figure out what does that mean for me now. And so that's where the flexibility comes into play, how, you know, any new moment that you might get. So if you have a child who still naps, using that time for your self-care time, not necessarily catching up on even work assignments or housekeeping, that sort of thing. So making sure that you recognize when you can grab those moments. Thinking about what it means to recharge. Is it on your own? Because that connecting to yourself is really important. Time for self-reflection is really key in understanding yourself as a person. You know, thinking ahead of where do I want to land when this is all said and done. You know, that was mentioned really well by Barb. You know, how do I want this story to be written? So making sure you take time to think about that. And kind of checking into some of those stressors that really trigger your responses, and having that quiet time to think about it will help you to map out a way to respond that really strengthens the relationships that you have with not just your children, but maybe your parenting partner, your spouse, other family members, and such. So maybe it's connecting with other people online. I mean, our increased use of technology, and at this point in our life, we probably weren't even thinking that this is the role that it would play, such a significant role for us, but it's been a really great way to connect. Maybe we can't see people in person, but at least we can see their face, hear their voice, and read, you know, their body language to some extent, how they're really doing. That's so important to make those connections. And even connecting with your children. We talked a lot about that too today. And just that might fill your bucket. That might be the thing that you need, that you consider self-care. Sitting down with your child and reading their favorite story 4 or 5 times a day. But responding to that request, snuggling up with them, getting that physical connection, might be that self-care that you're looking for. And recognizing ways to manage your stress. You know, before you feel like you might flip your lid, what would work for you? That deep breathing, you know, maybe taking a step back. We're all sharing the same space. So is there an area in your home that you can go to do some reflection on that moment, just to kind of bring yourself back online and chat with your child or whomever is, you know, pushing that button at the time in a more calm, cool, and collected manner. So some of the ways that we can care for ourselves, we can read, cook, watch TV, anything that really fills that bucket for you. There's also some online, again, with the virtual offerings, so that seems to be the best way for us to connect. And I'll make sure that these resources are shared with our audience in some way. We have ways to focus in on your mind, body, and spirit through the YMCA. We have a thisiswhy.ca. And that's from children to adults. So there's lots of activities on there that you can do on your own as an adult, but together as a family. Certainly being part of the early on Waterloo Region system, we have virtual experiences there. Again, you can connect in with your children, or you can connect in with other parents through that Facebook page. Our libraries offer a whole host of programming as well that could help support you through some of those moments where you just need some quiet time, and your children might be engaged in what the library might be offering. And certainly we have our Parenting Now and other websites that can help guide you and connect you to other parents. But I also want to mention that we talk a lot about virtual connections, but we have to recognize that there are some folks who may not be as comfortable or even have access virtually. So we want to make sure the message gets out to people some way that you can call us. You can pick up the phone, call our number, somebody will answer, and you can speak to somebody live over the phone, and we will help to navigate you through to whomever you'd like to speak to. So I also wanted to just leave with one more parting thought. When things get tough, this is another kind of theme for us. When things get tough, reach out, because we're all in this together. So thank you.
Thank you, Wanda. And you talked a little bit about resources there, Wanda. So I'd like to bring in Barb Cardow to talk about some of the resources that are out there in the region of Waterloo for parents and caring adults.
Hi, everybody, and it's just such a pleasure, I have to say, to be at the tail of this, just to listen to the inspiring messages from each of the speakers tonight. So I want to start by saying thank you to all of you. The resource that comes to my mind that this community has really come together, especially at this time, is a website actually, and it's Family Compass Waterloo Region. And if you Google that, that is a resource for children and youth, or parents of children and youth, to go to find, under normal circumstances, any resources that are available across the community for children and youth. There's a door that you can go in through to, if you have concerns about your child, or if you're a youth and you have concerns about yourself, you can answer a series of questions to go to, that leads you to the first logical place where you can either submit your information and ask for somebody to call you back, or you can just get the information and call them to say, I'd like to speak with somebody. And the third door is the Parenting Now website that takes you to resources for parents. And that website is hosted by KW Counselling Services. But what I want to say more about this website is, during this pandemic, the service providers across the region have really rallied around how can we best support children and youth and families as a community, that in a way that not one of us can do individually. And the Family Compass website now has a COVID-19 page right on the front of it that offers all kinds of resources to families at this time. Everything from if you need information on basic needs, mental and emotional health, safety, respite and relief, financial supports, government resources, community connectedness, stuff for teens and kids to do, resources for adults. And our community partners have all contributed information. That's a really great place to start, whether it's just because you need to talk to somebody, or because you actually need, you have concerns and you need a service, or you just want to look up information. And the community has has a real interest in ensuring that we are providing everything we can to parents and children at this time. I think I'll just stop there, Rosie, because that really does, we've tried to make it simple, and it's simply put, go to Family Compass Waterloo Region, and it's a great place to start to help you find the resources that you may be looking for at this time.
Thank you very much, Barb. We have one last question for one of our panelists. Perhaps Diane can talk about this. At the end of the day, if someone really needs to reach out for support when it comes to the challenges of parenting, where can they go? Who can they call?
They can go to parentingnow.ca and just pop us a quick email, and we will connect them in with one of our experienced parents that we have on our staff, and which is a parent-to-parent conversation, not necessarily to solve all the problems of the universe, but to connect person to person, and more importantly, parent to parent. They can go, of course, to Family Compass. They can call the Here 24/7 number. They can connect with any of the counseling agencies through the Counseling Collaborative, KW Counselling Services. They can connect with us that way. So it's just a matter of reaching out, and the support is there.
Thank you, Diane, and thank you to all of our panelists for joining us this evening. I think it's so good to just know you're not alone. There's so many other people going through this, and the support is out there. So thank you for your time, and thank you for everyone out there joining us this evening. I will now turn things over to Rebecca.
Thank you, Rosie, and thank you to our panelists just for taking the time. I don't know that we're going to get to questions from the attendees, but if you have any, we've shared some resources, and we will have those resources and some notes on our website. So if you go to kwcounseling.com or parentingnow.ca, we'll have some notes from this and links to the other resources in case you think, oh, it was Family Compass, but also go to Family Compass, because a lot of what you're looking for, you're going to find there. I also wanted to mention we've got a few more of these panels coming up. So this was the first one we're doing as part of our sort of our work this year in celebration of our very, very strange 70th anniversary. But there's one coming up June 4th around belonging and safety in Waterloo Region. So that's going to look at some of our vulnerable populations and people who are just experiencing this pandemic in a very different way, and some of the great work happening in our community to help people, and also ways to mental well-being, which will be on June 18th. So this was our first one. So thank you so much for everyone for coming together and helping us problem solve, what this was going to look like and what the messages what we wanted to share and what we wanted this to look like, based on what we're hearing and based on the phone calls that we're getting and that our organizations are getting. It's been really lovely connecting with all of you, and I think one of my takeaways has been there are days when this is messy, and the people who are experts in this work and the people who have put so much time and thinking and consideration into how you do this well know that there are days where this is going to be messy. And to be gentle with ourselves and with our families as we go through that and experience that, and expect that as part of what this is going to look like, and move past that and move to the next good thing that we can all do. So I really value that coming from people who have done such deep thinking around how you do this parenting job well under extraordinary circumstances. So thank you, all of you, for sharing that. And I think that's it for the evening. We're 8:57, so we did get us in under the wire. Thank you, Barbara and Barb and Diane and Angela and Rosie for hosting this evening. It's been a lovely evening, so thank you.